inner storyteller to the professional storytellers. We heard from Katrina Scotto DiCarlo earlier at Pitch Fest. Now we welcome her again as storytelling maven for this session of candid stories of resilience and beating the odds. After being asked to moderate one too many conference panels, Katrina had an epiphany. Why not bring her domain knowledge on storytelling into the conference setting and MC rather than moderate? From selecting to coaching to introducing, Katrina does this work because there's joy in helping people bring their story to light. She got her storytelling chops at Backfence PDX and Livewire Radio and has been Mistress of the Bell at Backfence PDX for the last 3 years. It's my pleasure to introduce Katrina, who will introduce her panel. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you so much for hosting us. And this session is super exciting because we're going to have 3 storytellers out here telling true, authentic tales of their lives. And they're all amazing social entrepreneur type people. Stunning people, actually, since I've been working with them. So they're going to come out here and tell you true stories. What's a little weird about this is they will not be doing this and reading notes. They'll be looking at you and walking around with the mic and interactive style because there's no notes allowed. There's no memorization allowed. There's no fancy things besides this image allowed. So they're going to come up here and they're going to tell their story, and they have 10 minutes to do it. And it's a true story, and it's a lot to come up and do that. The way this is going to work is that we have a theme around the stories called Beating the Odds. And it's going to be like raining resiliency in this room. Seriously. And it's going to be that way because social entrepreneurship, it's a path that's not always sunny. And we like to hide that it's not always sunny, but sometimes it's good to kind of pull back the cloak on that and show what this path really looks like so that we can help each other out. So this is a session where we're not talking about what the public knows about us. We're talking about the risks that we've taken inside for this work. Only we as individuals know what odds we're actually beating. Like, people on the outside wouldn't be able to tell you what you've done with your life. This is really inside stories. In fact, I'm going to start with a little story just to break the ice. And I beat the odds pretty awesomely when I was an early teenager. And I didn't have a household that was a proper place for a kid. So I kind of was a scruffy tramp-like teenager. I would assemble my wardrobe at the high school, lost and found. I would sleep at different friends' houses because I couldn't go home. So this is where I was as a teenager. And as you can imagine, things must have changed for me because I'm no longer that kind of person. And what ended up changing is my home got better, my friends got better. There was a few teachers that stood by me and didn't call me a delinquent, which was really cool at the time. And I ended up doing great in school and going to UC Berkeley and sort of taking a trajectory of abundance after that. But what was interesting in that time is I always had the sensation that I would be walking around with holes in my socks because I wore old socks. And if any of you have that experience, you know it's a very visceral feeling when you have a hole in your sock. And it's something that reminds you of your station in life at that time. And what I found fascinating today is that somehow, even though I have new socks, thankfully, my brain is wired to the holy sock. Like, I can't seem to, zap it out of my being that I had this struggle in my life. And I'll find myself, as an entrepreneur, what I'm doing now, this holy sock, just like my brain goes to it. And it even happened recently, a few months ago. I got my first international speaking engagement, which was really, for me, I was like, oh my God. And it was paid. It was fantastic. And I was so excited. And the person that was organizing it sent the schedule over. She emailed the schedule, and it was the scariest fucking thing I'd ever seen. I mean, the schedule was like, get off the plane, rush to a TV interview, radio interview, board meeting, board dinner, and then your speaking engagement. And there was like not a bathroom break, you know what I mean? And I looked at the schedule, and it was like some celebrity's schedule. This was not my schedule. I was like, this isn't me. I don't do this thing. I don't do that. And I had like the the holy sock feeling, which we call it a burning hole in our sock now, me and my husband. I had that feeling where it was like, I don't deserve this level of success because I'm somewhere in me a delinquent teenager tramp that just like is scraping to get by. And even though I had beaten the odds as a child and I'd gotten through it, it's still in me. And what was so cool is at that time, I chose to call my friend who had been my teacher at high school when I was really down and out. And he was my photography teacher, and we became best friends, and we still talk to this day. And I gave him a call, and I said, I'm totally stressing out. I can't believe they expect me to do this. How am I supposed to do this schedule? This is crazy. And he goes, Katrina, you are magnificent. You've always been magnificent. And I remembered that's what he always said about me. And that was one of the reasons I got through this period, is I had folks like that were saying these things, reminding me who I was, even though I had a hole in my sock. So it was really delightful kind of recovery to have like a mini beating the odds after this substantial period of struggle and sort of earning my right in the world in a way. You're going to hear some more stories about beating the odds, and you're going to hear it from 3 different storytellers, and I have to warn you that it is going to be a roller coaster, and there will be suffering, and there might be some sadness, because that's what it means to beat the odds. You got to beat something. It's not all a trajectory of success, is it? So you're going to hear some things that are rough, but there's always, in every story, I know these stories, there's going to be an uplift at the end. And that uplift is something that if you need to draft that uplift right now, you go ahead and draft it. If you need to slip it in your pocket for a later date when you need that, you do that. But you listen and go through the struggle with us, but come through it so that you have that going forward. So I'm going to introduce the first storyteller, who's Tim Carpenter. It's an honor to introduce him. He's the founder of Engage, a nonprofit that changes the way people think about aging by transforming senior apartment communities into vibrant centers of learning, wellness, and creativity. He's also the host and producer of Experience Talks radio show, an Ashoka Fellow, and a James Irving Foundation Leadership Award. Thank you. Tim?
I like to walk. So my father was the smartest person I ever knew. I wanted to be him. He was this insane guy. I wanted to adopt his insatiable curiosity. My mom liked to watch television, and because my dad loved my mom, he would pretend to watch television, but his nightstand was filled with 77 back issues of Popular Mechanics and historical novels and biographies. So he meant a lot to me. My younger brother was my best friend in the world, virtuoso musician. I'm a fan, so there was a part of me that loved that and a part of me that really hated him because he could play and I never could. I walked in his room one day and he liked heavy metal and I liked Pink Floyd at the time, and I remember hearing Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd coming from his room, and I walked in because I was surprised and saw my brother playing along with David Gilmour's guitar solo, and he had just picked up the guitar like 2 weeks before, so he was born knowing how to play the instrument. I met my wife in the 90s when I was in my 30s, and she was the love of my life, someone that I had waited to meet all my life, and met on a blind date and married 3 months later after being a dyed-in-the-wool bachelor forever. And then my daughter was born when I was 40, and I remember leading up to that, I was scared to death to be a parent because I was actually completely convinced that I would raise a serial murderer, because I was completely unconvinced that I could do this and be a role model to a young girl especially. So my tale is not a very happy one to start out with, and I'll try to get to that happy place at the end that Katrina talked about. But when I was in my 20s, my father died. And I was living with a girl at the time, and I went over to my parents' house, and my mom met me at the door and was freaked out because she couldn't find my dad. And I walked around trying to find him, and I found him on the side yard, face down, rolled him over, tried to revive him, and he died in my arms. In my 30s, my younger brother died of complications of diabetes, had a massive stroke, spent a week in intensive care, and died in my arms. And you might be seeing a pattern here, and I'm not trying to look for pity, but I'm Irish, I'll take it if you're offering. When I was in my 40s, my late 40s, my wife passed away, and we were on vacation in Australia. It was kind of a really bad Tuesday movie of the week story where we were traveling on vacation. My wife and my 8-year-old daughter were in Australia going all over the place. She contracted swine flu and ended up in isolation where we had to dress in bee suits and get all cleaned up to go in there to see her. And she died in my arms, and I was unable to touch her without having rubber gloves on at the end of her life. My daughter and I had a relatively normal relationship for a working father. You know, I was a guy who went to work a lot. I'm a social entrepreneur, as people have mentioned, and we work a lot, as everyone here can attest to. So I would come home late at night, and I would leave early in the morning, and we would have special dates to go get ice cream on the weekend. But that was about it. And so when she was 8 years old, I had to develop a relationship with my daughter for the first time, which was really, truly amazing for me. And the reason I tell you these stories, and it's not 4 weddings and a funeral, it's 3 deaths and a birth, because these moments in my life, every single one of them were the things that turned me into who I am today. I work with older people. And we fear aging in this country, and one of the reasons we fear aging in this country is because we fear death. And I've had 3 of the people that I've loved the most in my life die in my arms, and I am not afraid of death anymore. In my 20s, when my father passed away, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, but when my father went, I knew I wanted to do something important. I wanted to do something of purpose, and I wanted to devote my life to something that mattered. When my brother passed away in 1998, I founded the nonprofit Engage the following year, and changed my life because of it. I devoted it to him. When my daughter was born in 2000, I was on the verge of expanding what I was doing and really growing what I was doing, and had to rethink, how do I do this as a parent and a social entrepreneur at the same time. And in 1998, I was elected an Ashoka Fellow. My wife died a year later, and I had to figure out how to balance being a single dad of a daughter. And let me tell you, as a single dad of an 8-year-old daughter, I got nothing. You know, I literally had to try and walk around and talk to every mom I knew to figure out how to be one at the same time that I was a father and a social entrepreneur. And what I can tell you from where I stand right now is this is very hard work, and you will get to moments where it sucks, and it's really hard, and you got to go through the snow and get to the end of it. And that's the only reason to do this kind of work at all, is to apply yourself to it like there's no tomorrow, because there may not be. And frankly, for me, what has happened with my ability to do my job is I can talk to seniors about all of it, because none of it scares me anymore, and it's made me a much better human being. So that is my tale of woe and pity, and I think there's a cocktail reception after this, somebody told me. So I'll see you all there, and hopefully a couple of you are therapists.
Okay, so our next storyteller is Pam Campos, and Pam is a community mobilizer and an Air Force veteran. She's the director and mentor of Las Mujeres, a Latina empowerment organization. She was nominated by the governor of Oregon and confirmed by the Senate of Oregon as the sole student voting member on the PSU Board of Trustees. Please welcome Pam to the stage.
So resilience, being resilient has been a foundational theme in my life. The story that I'm going to share today is only a small snippet of the complexity and the work that I've done, but it's a story that I've subdued. It's a story that I've been like, that's not important, it's not a big deal, and it's frankly a story that a lot of folks don't know about me. But it is a big deal, and it's now in retrospect been one of the seeds that planted the importance of social sustainability and the work that I do, and frankly just now seeing how it's transformed my life. I am in the Air Force, and my last deployment that I've been on was one of the most challenging times of my life. I did a lot of amazing work, a lot of amazing things, stepped up, did big things, whatever. It was challenging. It was emotionally draining, stressful. I had a lot of different things going on, but the worst thing was that when I came back, which any military person will tell you is extremely arduous, I had 3 weeks until my separation date. 3 weeks to decide, are you going to stay in the Air Force? Are you going to leave? Are you going to take this bonus in exchange for your freedom? Are you going to go into the world with everyone telling me, you know, you're going to fail, you're going to be homeless, you're not going to make any money, you're not going to do anything with yourself, you need to stay? And kind of being the fearless, very independent, F everyone kind of woman that I am, I was like, I'm going to leave. I want something more for myself, so I'm going to go. And not only did I get out without any plans, I decided to move cross-country from Boston, Massachusetts to Portland, Oregon. My partner is in the Oregon Air Guard, and at the time he was doing a lot of special operations training. So when I actually moved here, he wasn't even here. And I didn't know anybody. I did not know a single soul in this state. I didn't know anybody really on this coast. And I mean, it's an understatement when people say Portland is a weird place, because coming from Boston, coming from the East Coast, I felt like I was on Mars, but I loved it. But it was really challenging. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand, you know, a lot of the norms here. But another thing that kind of compounded this was that I wanted to get an education, but I didn't know what credits were, what terms were. And I got here in July. And in August, on a really hot day, I was sitting in this parking lot at Portland State, sweating, near tears, furious, frustrated, isolated, because I couldn't find where to drop off the stupid paper at, and I couldn't find this office, and the deadline was coming up, and I got a phone call. I got a phone call from my mom, which I usually really I'm nervous about, because I always feel it's going to be bad news, because I'm very existential, and she's always very, in Spanish we say alterada, like really like nervous and excited, and she's like, hola Pami, ¿cómo estás? I have something to tell you. And I was like, okay, what is it? And she tells me that one of her clients have requested for her to go and work for them in France as their nurse's aide. My mom's a Honduran immigrant, and she's never been anywhere, and you would think that this would be like a celebration, like, yes, that's awesome. And she was calling me to ask my permission. She was calling me with constraints. And I had to look past the anger that this is something that she couldn't do. Not only was this impossible, really, because she's a single mother, but it was, they gave her 4 days to leave. And I remember in that moment just being like, go, you have to go, just, you know, give me my sister, who at the time was 10 years old, just sign her over to me, send her to me, you know, but you need to get out of here. You need to take this opportunity. And that's what she did. She moved out of her house in 4 days. She packed everything up, packed herself up, packed my sister up. She left, and she sent my sister to me to Portland with 2. And my sister is tiny. She's 10, but she's very small, same hair as me, with 2 huge suitcases. And I just remember picking her up from the airport and, you know, putting on that smile, like, this is so awesome. This is going to be really exciting. When I was just mortified, I was petrified. I didn't know what I was going to do. I remember telling her that day, like, yeah, I know this really cool park to take you to. And we got lost for like 2 hours because I didn't know what I was doing here. And that's kind of the trend that happened. And 2 big realizations came in this as I tried to really normalize this for her. It was all about her. And the first came when I dropped her off. So essentially what's happened is that I started at Portland State when I had to enroll her in Portland Public Schools, which was very scary. And one day I dropped her off at school, and I had been getting some weird looks from other mothers. You know, who is this person? She's got a Boston license plate. I don't know who she is. And I got invited to this mother's brunch, and it was just weird. It was just awkward and backwards and weird because I'm not a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a military woman, I'm in school, like I don't know anything about gardening or recipes or whatever, you know, and so it was just really weird for me to act like, yeah, this, you know, and so one of the biggest things that happened to me is I need to stop normalizing this shit. Like, it's not normal. It's weird, it's backwards, it's awkward, and I'm making a disservice to myself, but more so I'm making a disservice to her, right? And so I stopped being so everything's okay. And we moved forward from there. The second realization came when my sister, I picked her up from school, and she came home in tears. And, you know, I'm already very a protective person. I'm, you know, kind of a lioness type of personality. And I was like, what happened? Who did it? What happened, right? And she was like, Pam, are we poor? And it was very difficult to look at someone you love so much in the face and to just see that they've been oppressed by another human being in a classist way. And I lived, to give you a kind of a context, we lived in a very tiny apartment in Southwest Portland with a futon, and we didn't have very much, but it wasn't the financial struggles that really bothered me. It was more this poverty of the mind reality, this feeling of isolation and kind of being depreciated, that we're working so hard, and how can someone spread a rumor about a 10-year-old that they're poor? And, you know, that was one of the first steps where I understood that, you know, tough conversations are great. And I kind of expressed to her what my mother raised me with. And in Spanish, it's, we say, que se jodan. Fuck 'em. And that's what I said to her. Like, do you think we're poor? She's like, I didn't think so. And I was like, I didn't either. You know, we're happy. Yeah, we burn a lot of tortillas, and I can't cook, and, you know, but we did have a beautiful time in that time. Dragging her to my military days, and the anxiety of trying to find a babysitter for her when I didn't know anybody here, and that fear. But through it all, I mean, there was many times where we were just cracking up at how absurd the situation was for the two of us. And we ended up doing that for 6 months because my mom never knew when she was going to come back. And for 6 months, that's just what we did. And one of the most pivotal things that I really learned from this was that I don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to have every piece. We don't have to make things normal. There's actually a lot more power in being weird and being awkward and not knowing, right? And so it's just been so monumental and instrumental to me that this was a lesson I learned from a 10-year-old. Thank you.
So our last final storyteller is Dina Pierrot, and she is diversity and equity and inclusion is at the core of everything Dina does. She does diversity consulting and recruiting with her company, and she also has this amazing program, if you haven't heard of it, iUrban Teen Tech, that exposes male youth of color to careers in technology. She's been honored at the White House, Ebony Magazine Power 100 list, and Portland Business Journal Orchid Award recipient. Please welcome Dina. Thank you.
I had to borrow Tim's timer because I get in a habit of talking too much. And so if it goes off and it scares you, don't let it scare you. You know, earlier they said a quote that was, service is what you pay, is the rent you pay for living on this earth. And that resonated with me because I said, that's what I do. I am paying rent plus some because of all the work that I do. And I think back at my mom, what my mom would always tell me. I think I was born into doing this stuff. Plus, I was bred into it. My mother would always tell me, Dina, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what material possessions you have. What matters most is what you've done to help others, how you've affected someone's life. I heard that from when I was little all the way to growing up. And I'm like, but can't I be kind of like a rich person that doesn't care about anybody and just make some money and making my bank account look good. In fact, when I started my businesses, I had some business owners that would say, Dina, you do too much for the community. You're going to have to forget about doing all this community advocacy and start making money. You can always come back to that later. That's not me. That goes against the grain of everything that I am. So I said, you know what? I think I can do both. I think I can still do something that's meaningful and still make an income and keep a roof over my head at the same time. So that's what I've done. The path has been a little slower than for most, but at least I've done what I felt was in my heart. She was saying some of the awards that I've gotten, and yes, I've gotten a lot. I've gotten a lot of them. But I would tell you, I got my very first one on my birthday, October 6, 2010. That was my very first award. And I started, and that was from Mosaic Blueprint, the company that I started in 2007. After I had been downsized from the city of Portland, I was always in the working world, but I always realized that I didn't quite fit into the box of working for someone else. I always felt like I was an entrepreneur. I was the one always changing stuff up, and trying to, the positive deviant person, the person that wanted to change things and make it better. And I had a huge following. I almost felt like the Pied Piper, because I get a whole group of people like, what was it, Spanky in the gang? Is that it? I felt like Spanky in the gang. I had my whole little team of people that were helping me change the world. So I was the accidental entrepreneur. What happened, and I'll tell you, and I'm like a big baby. And I say I'm a big baby because there's only 7 years of my life that I did not live with my mother. She raised me, and then she came to live with me when my parents split up. So I had that honor. So while at the city of Portland, I was being downsized. I was shaking things too much up with diversity and equity. And at the city, when they want to get rid of you, they cut you out of the budget. So I was cut out of the budget. I was like, oh my God, I've seen it happen to other people, now it's happening to me. But I could have gone to another bureau. I was there 16 years. I could have gone someplace else. But there was this part of me that kept saying, now is your time to break away from the golden handcuffs. Now is the time for you to do that. But I was still wavering. But what happened, my mother, who lived with me forever, helped raise my sons, was diagnosed with dementia. I didn't have any options. The only option I had was to stay home and take care of my mother and start my business. But I had a goal in mind. I wanted my mother to see me be successful while she still knew who I was. So I worked. I had a teenage son at home, taking care of a parent with dementia and launching a business. Now that's insane. That is, when I think back on it, I'm like, how did I do this? So I worked, and I worked, and I worked. My friends would say, Dina, stop working so hard. You're going to kill yourself. Your health is at risk. I say, you guys don't understand. I'm working against a timeline. I don't know when that timeline is going to be up. I don't know when my mother's going to wake up. And not know who I am. So on my birthday, I won the MedWeek Minority Business of the Year award. Excuse me, you guys. I won the award in front of 1,000 people at the convention center. My mother was there and she was glowing. Her brain was shrinking. It was a matter of time before she would know who I was. So when I got on stage, and I never script what I'm going to say, I always feel it has to come from your heart. I told the audience, to my friends in the audience, I want you to know it looks like I beat that timeline. And because of that, I'd like everyone to acknowledge my mother who's here today at table 35. Let's give her a round of applause. This shy, introverted woman. This shy, introverted woman jumps up and gives the most brilliant smile you've ever seen. See, I'm more gregarious like my father, but I have the heart of my mother. She smiles and 1,000 people give her a round of applause. Little did I know that within 24 hours, my life would change. My mother died the next day. of a pulmonary embolism. My world stopped. I was devastated. That was the time for me to really promote my business, to take it to the next levels. I couldn't. I was frozen. But when I look back on it, the glory of it was that higher power, and I don't know who you believe in, but my God kept her here long enough for her to see me get that award. And he was gracious enough to take her before the dementia did. That was October 7th, 2010, when she passed. One of the things that I told my mom, and it was so amazing, when I knew I was getting the award in her dementia, I would tell her every day, I would go, Mom, did you know I'm getting an award? And she would go, really? That is amazing. The next day I go, Mom, you know I'm getting an award? Really? So I got that every day. It was amazing. But one of the things, but my mother, she was my cheerleader. She was that, when you're an entrepreneur, you need that base of support, someone that believes in you unconditionally. And that's who she was to me, my biggest cheerleader. Even when I was little, I would say the things I was going to do, and she would always say, you can do it, Dina, you can do anything. And I believed it. 2 weeks before she passed, I told her, because I always start things, but I start things that are needed. 2 weeks before she passed, I told her that I was going to start a Dr. Martin Luther King celebration in Vancouver. And I did. I also told her, because I dream big, I got this Polyisha thing going on. And Polyisha is the black version of Pollyanna. I'm like, I'm going to dream big. You know, I'm like, make it happen. And so I told her that I was going to have Congressman John Lewis, who was Dr. King's friend and ally in the civil rights struggle. I'm going to have Congressman John Lewis be my speaker at my breakfast. And she'd go, really, Dina? That's amazing. I think that was the only thing she knew how to say at that point. She passed in 2010, October. January of that next year, I started my Dr. Martin Luther King breakfast. It was sold out. I had all the elected officials there, all of our community in Vancouver there, and it was an amazing event. This past January, God, I'm such a wimp. This past January, my Dr. King breakfast was amazing. I spoke it into existence. Congressman John Lewis was at my breakfast and did a welcome. So I say, with all the awards that I've gotten and all the accolades, none of them, nothing can take the place of that first award on my birthday, 2010, when my mother saw me get that award. The day that she died, I took off her wedding band and I wear it on this hand. So every time I get ready to go on stage, I rub it to bring her into that space. When I walked into the White House, first I was sad because she wasn't there to see it. I rubbed the ring to bring her in. And I was amazing in the White House. I made you guys proud. Thank you.
So can you guys come out? Because, come on, we got to do like a big round of applause. That was crazy good. This is so hard. They just did something so gutsy, and we're so vulnerable up here, and I can't tell you how much we all appreciate it. It's really, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.